On this episode, we talk with Kent Miller about budgeting and finances.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Andrew.
Joel.
Season 4, here we go.
It's on.
Oh boy. You know, they've threatened to change the locks on this studio several times, and they haven't done it. So here we are again, Season 4. Coming back strong. You know what? And I should say, we do want to thank, always want to thank the people that give us space here that allow us to record.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been good to have a long-standing permanent home. We were just reminiscing about the setup and tear down that had to occur.
That was terrible.
In the early days of the show. And I can say that
terrible.
That's how long we've been at this. We can now refer to the early days. The early days.
Season 4, this is what? So we're 4 years now. Well,
three.
Yes, three and a half.
Three-ish. Yeah. So
math isn't my strong suit.
We're walking out of our toddler phase as a podcast. So soon they'll be wanting to drive. This show will soon want to drive, or at least have their own phone, and that's where I have to draw the line. Right there.
No phones for the show?
No phones for the show. The metaphor is really breaking down, Andy. I'm sorry.
Wait, hold on. Let's just do this.
What's brewing?
Andrew, give us an update, because your family has just had a splendid time.
Oh, yes.
Away. I love the pictures, and I felt a little jealous because you were doing what for some would be, it was an indoor activity, but what often people think of as an outdoor activity, but you were doing it in the dead of winter as the Arctic air was coming in.
We did. So for part of the kids' Christmas present, we took them to the Wisconsin Dells, and we went to the Wilderness Resort, which is great because it's like 3 water parks in one.
Come on.
It was nice. And
there's like something for everybody. There was. Because if you're trying, like us, if you got kids of a wide range of age, you're trying to keep all of them happy.
There's little water parks for the little kids. There's big slides for the big kids.
Absolutely.
There's
high rope
course, arcade. This is the best part. So one of the water parks has a pizza place in it.
Yep.
And we could have walked up and got our pizza, but we said, no, I'm going to call them.
You're getting fancy.
Because they will deliver it to anywhere in the resort.
Come on.
And so even though we were in the same place, they came right to our table and brought it. It was great.
Andy, what a time to be alive. When you could be at a water park resort and have them
in the winter
and have them bring you pizza.
It was great.
What more could you ask for? I'm so glid you guys had that time. That's awesome.
So how was your Christmas?
Well, Christmas was fantastic. I should say last Christmas, we did go to Southern California, and I'm not complaining about that at all. I should say this has been the story that came out of that past Christmas. So my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, who have a home in San Diego, they just really lovely place. They've got a pool in the backyard. And so last Christmas, they're like, hey, normally they would not be using the pool in at that time of year.
Sure.
Right. But they're like, no, we have guests over. We're going to make this like a hotel-like experience. They ran the pool and the pool heater. Now, it's not super cold there, but
you need the heater.
You need the heater, right? So apparently it was using so much gas that the gas company thought there was a gas leak.
Oh, no.
And came and turned their gas off. I won't tell you what their bill was for that week we were there. Hefty. So it's like
so they didn't invite you back this year.
No, it's exactly. We didn't get to come back.
They said, forget this. We're not doing this.
We were fortunate from the various corners of the United States. My wife's family, her sisters came in, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California. And we had Christmas at our place. It was wonderful. Really, really enjoyed it. So grateful. And then we were also able my brother and his wife flew in from Colorado the few days after, and we had our Christmas on my side with them. Really, really good. Really, really enjoyed the time. It's like what we've always dreamed Christmas could be.
Just hanging out. And
everyone got along. That's a win.
That's
everyone
that
got
is
along.
A win.
And enjoyed some really delicious food. I this year people listened to me because I ate my body weight in shrimp, and I don't ask for much.
Did you get a green bean casserole?
A little. Did I get another green bean casserole? I feel like I don't know.
From Thanksgiving.
There was a green bean casserole in there somewhere, and I'm not remembering where it came from. But thank you.
You can thank me later. I shipped it.
Andy made some phone calls, made sure I got the green bean casserole. So absolutely great holiday season, and we are looking forward to 2022 as a family. We are also looking forward to it because Andy and I got on the stick, and our families are actually going to get together sometime soon. Very soon. We've been working. It's a logistics thing. I mean, we really have to work at it now.
We do. Yeah.
But we're looking forward to that as well. So that's what's going on, my friend.
Awesome. Well, it's good to be back with you behind the microphone here to do season 4. So I'm excited.
Yes. Well, hey, before we go any farther, Andy, we want to remind everybody that our support comes from our good friends at Everence Financial, helping members invest in what lasts through financial services with impact. More at everence.com/Michiana. Securities offered through Concourse Financial Group Securities Incorporated, member FINRA, SIPC.
And also, support comes from Concrete Barber. Head over to concretebarber.com to see all of the great styles and hair products that you can get for yourself to keep your beard and your hair looking dapper.
Dapper. We did have a recent guest who I'm waiting to find out how it went, because you're always like, DJ does a fantastic job, but the deal is every person you send over to him, it's like people are particular about their hair,
Right.
So we do have a recent guest that did a haircut beard combo, and so I'm waiting to see. I haven't seen any public photos yet, so I'm crossing the fingers. But
thanks, DJ.
Yeah, thank you, DJ.
All right, tonight we have Kent Miller from Everence with us on the phone. He's actually here in studio with us.
In person.
Wow.
I can get on the phone if you really want.
No. It's great.
Would you just leave and get on the phone?
We'll call you back on this one.
Sir, could you stand outside and call in, please?
We sound more like a radio show then if we call in.
That's true.
Andy's used to. We're used to remote. A lot of remote.
We've done remote stuff,
people, but it's always a pleasure to have people in the studio.
Yes. Anyways, welcome Kent to the show, and we wanted to talk with you a little bit about finances. Again, you're an Everence employee, so we are in Everence being sponsored. We thought this would be a great idea to bring some Everence employees on and talk about finances this year in the 2022. And so we're going to be talking about budgeting this year, this episode, but. Welcome to the show. First, though, tell me a little bit about your dad's stats, who you are as a dad, a husband, a grandpa, whatever else makes you that dad.
What makes Kent Miller tick? That's what I want.
That could be a long episode, so we'll try to keep it condensed.
Thank you. All right.
So married now, oh my goodness, 37 years, and to my wife, Jill. We have 2 daughters that are with us. We lost a son who was just 9 hours old when he passed. That was a rough time. But my oldest daughter, Addie's married. She has 3 kids. And so I have grandchildren, Sophia, Ryan, and Brooklyn. And then my younger daughter, Danae. And we all live in the same house together.
Yeah, this is intriguing, Andy.
Tell us a little bit more about that. You were talking to us before the show here, and it was a really interesting story. So can you tell me how that transpired?
Yeah, it started as a joke. Like I love looking on Zillow at stuff, and I'm kind of hanging out one day and I see this really cool house and it's got 8 bedrooms. And so I just send a link as a joke to my daughters and my wife. And I'm like, hey, we could all live together. Ha, ha, ha. And I don't know, about 3 minutes later, I get several emails back. It says, hey, I think you should schedule something. This looks kind of cool. So we looked at it. We went through the house. The grandkids claimed their rooms right away,
Nice.
But we got done, and my daughters both came up to me and said, Dad, we need a family meeting. And so, yeah, then it was just a matter of kind of working out the details and making it happen.
I want to believe that I love my family enough
to do that,
that I could be all in the same house with them. So here's the deal. What we're going to do is periodically follow up with Kent, and I want to see how this experiment is really playing out.
Yeah.
Because if it can happen, maybe, there's something to it. And I should say what Kent is doing is really kind of an ancient thing, right? He's actually
right.
bringing the family back together under one roof. So I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you have to come back and tell us.
I'm really intrigued. That's awesome.
We're a little over 2 years in. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And you're still surviving.
We're thriving, actually.
Great. Awesome.
Thriving, he says. Yeah.
right.
So there we go. Okay. I
Great.
love it.
Great. So again, we want to talk a little bit about budgeting and cash flow tonight. So tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll start from there, and then we'll talk about budgeting.
So my background is pretty varied. I spent probably 30 some years in youth ministry in different aspects of it. So I worked with local outreach organization. Well, it's a national one, but Youth for Christ,
Yep.
a lot of people, Campus Life, that kind of stuff. Did that for a decade, went to work at a church here locally and was a youth pastor, young adult pastor, did that for a long time. Worked for a local mission board and did some work for them, and then got called up to a camp out of that. And so I was a camp in Southern Michigan up here, and that's where I really got kind of my teeth into finances and budgeting a little more. I was the director, and so you have to deal with, a limited amount of income and how's that going to work. And before, it was just dealing with youth budgets and trip budgets and stuff like that, outside of family budgets, of course.
Sure.
And so out of that, I had a great experience, but discovered about, maybe 4.5 years in that I was allergic to everything at camp. And so couldn't breathe up there, and basically had to leave and spent some time with the denomination here locally, and then eventually ended up pastoring again in a church. And so those experiences all had different things that involved finances, that involved working with people and their finances, everything from charitable giving when we were at the camp to obviously in the congregations, people give and you have budgets you have to deal with there. So all of that kind of led to this opportunity. And I just got tapped one day by one of our colleagues, and she was out at my office at the church and said, "Man, I think you'd make a great financial consultant. You should look into this." And
And you've been with Everence for how long now?
almost 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so oftentimes we joke about trying to destigmatize financial consulting and all this and who we think these people are. But one of the reasons we've partnered with Everence is really our experience has been that there is just well-rounded people with real life experience who've been out in the real world, who have gifts and abilities in this area, but are able to walk alongside of people and to meet them. In the circumstance of everyday life, people's financial situations are as varied as the people themselves, and so it does take a particular kind of, I think, mindset and gift set to be able to step into those situations. And as we've said before, when we had Brent on the show, it's like people just aren't always super excited to talk about where they are financially, or if they feel lost, it can be a real just a point of either contention in their family. Can there be relational issues? And I know from the pastoring side, I'm sure you're able to pick up on those sort of tensions pretty quickly when people are coming together. On the budgeting side, so I'm going to play devil's advocate for budgeting, because Jackie and I just had our budgeting discussion. I happen to know that the DeMott household annual budgeting meeting is occurring on Tuesday night. So
Okay.
We're coming up on it. Kent, why budgeting? Because like so many people, I have felt in the past that budgeting is a way to keep me from having fun with my money. It can feel like when I hear the word budget, it is, it's just hey, I work hard for my money. The budget is trying to take that money and take it away from me so that I can't enjoy life. And so why in the world, as I'm playing devil's advocate here, why would I enter into that practice, that framework? And then once I do enter into it, or if I dare enter into it, what are the initial baby steps that I can take so that maybe I don't just feel completely overwhelmed in the process?
Yeah. Great question. Even if it's a devil's advocate one. No, one of the things that I think is so true is that is, I would say, almost everybody who's not gotten into working with a budget or cash flow kind of dynamic is they feel that's the intent, is to say, here's what I can't do with my money. And the reality is, when you have a budget in place that you have worked through and figured out what are the goals and the things that are important to me, what are the things I want to try to achieve, whether that's financially, whether that's giving to organizations you care about, whatever it is that you have kind of passion about, once you have something that helps you track your money, know how you're spending it, and look where everything's at, you're actually going to be able to achieve those goals much more quickly. And you're going to be able to get to a point where there's going to be, and they throw around the word financial freedom a lot, right? I mean, I hear that all the time, and I get that concept. But the idea is you actually get to a point where you can tell your money where to go. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
So I guess if I'm, let's just say, I'm starting getting budgeting, where do I start? Like, that's going to be a really daunting task if you're looking going, hey, I don't really have a whole lot of money to begin with because it seems to be going places I don't know where it's at, things like that. So sometimes that's a really hard place. So where do we start? Like, if I'm looking to go, like, where do I go?
Well, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on that, because when my wife and I first, we're getting married and we were starting to have kids, and I worked for, really poverty wage, and she wasn't working at the time, and we would listen to a lot of these Christian radio shows about finances. And here's the approach that I always heard. It was like, well, we want to help you learn how to use your money. So first of all, get $1 million. Now, once you have $1 million, let me tell you what you can do to be faithful stewards of your money. Right?
Yeah.
And I know they weren't saying that. Don't get me wrong. Don't call into these guys and tell them that. But that's how I understood it. This was such a daunting task. And the biggest issues that we need to I think wrap our heads around is figuring out, where is our money even going? Like, that's the place you start. When I work with clients, and I'll ask, do you have a budget? And there's that awkward silence, which I know right away means no, we really don't, but we want to say something that sounds intelligent. And what happens is that I'll say, you know what, here's what I want you to try. Take 1 month and take every receipt of every cent that you spend and gather it and record it. If you buy a candy bar out of the machine at work, write that down if you don't have a receipt. Keep track of every penny you spend, because most people don't have any clue where all their discretionary money is. And quite honestly, many of us don't think we have discretionary money because it just gets used up in what we think is normal things, right? And so starting there is kind of the groundwork to say, okay, do that for a month, maybe 2, to see how, maybe there was an exception. Don't do it in December when you're buying Christmas gifts. Try to choose a normal month, and that's the place to start to figure out, where is my money going? Like, am I spending a lot on games on my iPad? Am I spending a lot, at lunch every day? Like, am I buying that cup of coffee on the way into work? And are there things that I can do to change that? So it's really getting kind of an inventory of what you're currently doing, and then starting to put things into, I love a spreadsheet, so I'm into spreadsheets, and we give those out all the time to say, here, plug these numbers in. So,
can I think about, in the pastoral world, when there are marital issues, it's one of, I always name the big 3. Sex, drugs, and money are
not rock and roll.
Not rock and roll, but maybe for some, I don't know. Finances in the marital relationship, big deal. We often hear from so many wives in particular that financial security is one of their top values, and feeling as though that they're on the team and on mission with their spouse, right? We hear that all the time. When it comes to a couple coming together, because I know this is, I full disclosure, this has been the struggle for the DeMott family, has been just even some competing values with our money, or how we perceive what we have or what we don't have, or our, when husband-wife team coming together, trying to establish a budget, what are some maybe helpful ground rules or some helpful parameters or things that you would say to try to help get at least on the same page with each other to begin working in the right direction?
Yeah. I think one of the key things, and you're going to recognize this from a lot of pastoral counseling kind of things, because I draw on that from my own experience, right?
Yep.
But is to help them understand no answer is a bad answer as we start out, as we talk about these things. Like don't apologize for where you're at. If you're not into giving money to the church or to charities, or not in giving as much as my partner is, that's okay. Let's not don't cut the other person off and correct them. Let them share what's going on and that kind of thing. And then trying to take and say, okay, so if one person is here and one person's over here, how do we move both of you to a more central ground? And what's that going to take? The issue with many of the couples that I meet with, and I would say probably 80% of the time, it's the men who are taking care of the money primarily. It probably was more than that 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's usually about 80% of the ones focused on that. And you're right. The wife wants to feel like everything's okay.
Yep.
They want to know everything's okay. They want to know that if I want to go and, get this for our kid, I'm going to have the $20 in the account.
Sure.
To do. I mean, they want that security. And so that communication of how do we set up times of reviewing where we're at financially, and I encourage weekly. If you're not doing it right now, try to do it weekly. And after that, if it can happen other times, or just ask one another, make sure that's an open avenue, that neither one is trying to hide the finances or hide what they're spending or that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a quick, easy way to have your marriage go wrong.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
to not talk about that, because it can be a fight just like that.
Oh yeah.
And I have, boy, oh boy, I think of a few instances where in relationships where there was secretive spending, or the taking out of credit cards in unknown and then those situations going off in bad directions quickly. And as always, I mean, any of these conversations are relational conversations. We do have financial advisors, but it is a form of, there's a counseling aspect to this too, because we are talking about values. We are talking about goals. We are talking about, what are we trying to achieve together? And, there's so many times, we're also bringing in prior experiences or perceptions of money from when we enter into a marriage or into a relationship, and so much of it's unvoiced. I know it certainly was in my case, where just approaches to money were different, or thoughts. And I've said before, even early in my marriage, I mean, Jackie and I were married 2 years, and then the recession hit. And I graduated college into a recession with a Bible degree, highly marketable. Yeah. And so for so long, we lived in a reality of just getting by, like to be able to think. I mean, to your point, you said earlier about get $1 million and then we'll do whatever. It was what my mindset for the longest time was, when I say a poverty mindset, it was a mindset of lack, of okay, we're not going to end up we're just going to get by for probably for a while, for this foreseeable future. So let's just make sure that we, recession proof ourselves as well. So we're going to try to keep a low mortgage. We're going to get a house where we have a very low mortgage payment. We're not going to have any, the cars are all going to be gifted to us by people. We're going to try to keep every possible cost down, and then just make it. But then going to a place then of kind of a healthier perspective of, not from a place of lack, but from a place of there are things that you can accomplish, even if it's in modest ways over a long period of time. Yeah. I think that's one of the bigger reveals to me has been hey, if you do this thing with even this small amount of money over the course, some amazing things can happen, and I'm sure you've seen that with folks.
Well, and it comes out especially when you're talking with couples, and it can be younger or older, who are dealing with like credit card debt, can just eat people up. I think I read something the other day that it's something like, I think the average person has around $8,000 to $10,000 of credit card debt that they're carrying.
Wow.
And, when you think about that much and the interest that's accumulating with that, it goes back to helping people look at their goals and their dreams. Like, do you have to have what you feel you need, this dream that maybe if I'd wait 10 years would be very, very much a reality, but do I need it now?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I get used to that now in whatever context I grew up in. And if those are at different polar points in a couple's marriage, you're right. The tension is going to be there almost immediately. But trying to figure out ways then to say, how do I take care of this debt? How do I the whole snowball effect? How do I pay as much on the one that's the lowest? Let's get rid of that, roll it over to the next one, and so on. And at the same time, say, how do I work you mentioned recession proof, Joel. And one of the things that can really be helpful is in your budget to actually set aside money that's an emergency fund. When I heard people say get 3 to 6 months of income for an emergency fund, when my wife and I barely could pay the bills each month, I just laughed at people.
Right. And that's one of those things that you look at and you're like, there's no way that I can do this.
No way, except when you start doing just a little. Say, you know what, we're going to set this aside and we're going to do our best to not touch that.
And we're going to pray that nothing major breaks in the meantime.
No water heater breaks,
right,
the car doesn't break down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's just so interesting. We for the longest time, here's what I've kind of gathered and what I've noticed is that, even like with the church that I work at, a lot of non-for-profit financial advising are saying for non-for-profits, bare minimum 3 months, be able to cover all expenses. If giving just dropped off tomorrow, that you would be able to. And so what works for individuals also I see in other organizations and things like that.
Correct.
And just having that perspective of, listen, I'm not waiting for doomsday, but I still remember, 2008 is vivid in my mind. And I feel, and I know like my grandparents, I have one remaining living grandparent, hi Grandma Carla, who's a
listener of the show.
Who is a listener and a supporter
awesome.
of the show. Yes. God, and she had her, by the way, 89th birthday this past fall.
Happy birthday.
She's kicking it. My favorite grandma. Awesome. But folks of that age, they remember, like you can see it's affected their life. They remember a time when when things were things were serious, and then, and the resources were not always there. And I feel like that's kind of the same for me now. Mm-hmm. What about the coming generation who's had, relatively speaking, it's been pretty good. Talking to younger people about finances, and then I've also, just at a personal level, you talking to your own kids. What was the journey, and you talking to your kids financially, budgeting, planning like that?
Right.
How is that played out? Because we always do the theoretical, but we're gonna put Ken in the hot seat and say,
that's great.
What did he do? Because then I'm going to take the notes on that one and just follow his guidance.
You're not going to take notes on that one. I'll just tell you that right now. The first part of the question was
in terms of
young families now.
Yes, young families now.
So here's one of the really, I think it's a dilemma, and that is you have had every generation for, the last, I don't know how many generations, they've made more money than the previous generations. Mm-hmm. And we're posed now to be at a point where this coming generation is not going to make more money than what their parents did. And that's going to be hard on them because they've kind of been accustomed to a certain lifestyle, right? And so that can be very difficult to figure out, how are we going to make this? How are we going to make this work if, and people want to pursue things that they love doing over and above saying, I'm just going to put my nose to the grindstone and do a job I don't like.
Because that's a cultural shift.
Exactly.
The desire for experience and exploration.
Yep.
Much more than I know myself, and definitely my parents, which were like put your nose to the grindstone, get her done, and then when you retire, maybe you could enjoy your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I even had my wife's grandfather, when he was alive, I was working for Youth for Christ, and pulled me aside one day and said, so when are you going to get a real job? Make some real money. It was one of those kind of dynamics. And so you felt that pressure. But
Yes, and it didn't make it any better when you were in youth work either.
Exactly.
I've heard that. When are you going to become a real pastor?
Yeah. For my own kids. So they'll probably tune in and listen to this at some point. But we actually were pretty miserably and failed at doing very much when they were little. And that's the best time is to help kids understand about savings. Hopefully we're doing a little bit more with our grandchildren now, being in the same house and not that whole bit. But one of the things that we did try to do is help them understand the gravity of debt. Like, interest rates will eat you up. So if you're putting money and buying things on credit, here's what that does. And so, that really was something we dealt more with when they got into, high school and into college. But we tried to, okay, hey, you've gotten some money. Let's try to give 10% to the church.
Yep.
So we did some of those things. But in terms of really helping them walk through and understand money, I think my wife and I both say we really didn't do a good job when they were little. I think we've had a lot more experience now, and being able to help them learn and understand not only the value of money, but be able to say, how do we structure our money in such a way that we can still live in the compound?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So for our listeners, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear your feedback on this. Obviously not live, but give us a call. 574-213-8702 is our voicemail number. 574-213-8702. Ken, let's talk a little bit about why are some common reasons that people fall off of the budgeting track once you're on it? Because it can be hard to stay on that track.
Well, first I want to clarify that I am a firm believer in knowing where your money's going and in budgeting where you want to go and understanding that a budget is a guide.
Sure.
Because some people want to say, well, we put this in the budget and we can never veer off of that one iota. Like we have to stick to this. And that can cause as much tension in a marital situation as anything else. And so part of that is to, and this, I'm going to sound like a repeating record, but go back and say, if it's not working, then we need to do another month of keeping all our receipts. Because one, that's just a pain.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that threat of that might say, okay, I maybe need to watch what I'm doing because I'm going to have to account for everything, every charge I make that comes through on the, on the bank statement now or the online or whatever. And if I have so much cash, the other thing that can be really helpful when you're trying to say, how do we stick to a budget, is making sure you're budgeting in ways, to your point earlier, Joel, that you have some money that you can just spend however you want.
Yep.
Now, that might only be $3,
Right.
depending on your scenario, right? That's okay. But if you have that $3 or $5 that I can spend however I want, and maybe that can grow at some point, depending if we improve their circumstances, that sometimes can help you hold on to the budgeting a little bit more. Making decisions that are healthy for your family when it comes to the kinds of foods that we buy. Sometimes it's just buying the cheapest things. I mean, that's one of the things I talk to people all the time. I'm on the board. I just left the board, finished a term with a food pantry board here locally. And, a lot of the food that they get is just full of carbs and starch, and it fills them up, and it's not healthy for them. And sometimes you can spend your money a little differently, get food that's healthier for you. You actually feel fuller, blah, 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 right? You get all that. Making some of those kind of changes can actually help you in the long run. And coming down to having a kind of a come to Jesus meeting with what do we really need and what do we really want? What's a need? What's a want? And that can be a discussion that's can be really hard sometimes for people.
Yeah, I know we're also right now in the throes of purchasing a new vehicle, and it'll be new to us. My father has worked in the automotive manufacturing industry for my entire life. I will never purchase a new vehicle on principle alone, but. And he tells, my dad told me stories. It used to be like GMAC financing, for instance. There was a time when General Motors was not making any money on any of their vehicles apart from the financing. So the product itself, you couldn't, like, if they didn't have people financing it, if they just had people just buying their product, they would not be making any money. Wow. So it's just, that's telling again to the system in which we are working. And I'm trying to participate in that system as little as possible. But you know, every day when I start up my 2004 Ford van, which is, it's still running. I'm a little there's just one thing after another, you know, it's whatever, but we're making it last. But now it is a thing of like, what do we need, right? This is what the conversation is between my wife and I. What do we need? For us as a family, we're a travel baseball family as well. So I know that we put between 24 and 25,000 miles on a vehicle every single year, right? So I have that number in mind. I'm pretty handy. I can fix cars, whatever, but the time in my role now in the family, the time and availability that I have to fix a vehicle myself,
not worth it.
It's just like, now for me, like, time literally is money. And, you know, so I'm in a different reality than I was when I think our good friend Matt Miller, when he gave me his 1992 Honda Accord, which I loved that vehicle
to death.
Loved it to death. I loved it I got good mileage out of it, loved it into the graveyard. You know, now the conversation is between Jackie and I, and she's just going to love me that I'm just putting this all out there. But what do we need? You know, I really wanted a truck. Really wanted a truck. Mostly the part of it is, and again, for those of my coworkers listening, most of the other male coworkers that I have a truck, and I get so much grief when I pulled up in my minivan. It's not a major factor, but it is in the back of my mind for sure. But also, you know, we had the conversation. It's like, well, how practical is that for the fact that we are a family of 6? And then, you know, we going back, it's all these value things of going back and forth of, you know, because I am really stuck on, it's like, I do not want another minivan, because we have one that will last us. The Toyota has got more years on it for sure. But, you know, those value things, and it really does make me, like, I have to stop and go, what are the values that are driving my purchasing of whatever it is? You know, I know for a long time, I don't think I gave a whole lot of thought to that. We love having the conversation about, like, we're big Aldi fans. And I'm grateful for Aldi, because when I go to Aldi, I don't feel like I'm compromising on what I'm getting, right? But it's, you know, cheaper for sure. But we have this ongoing conversation about what generic things will you not buy? Like, they're you know, but it's also,
my wife had to have that conversation with me. Like, there are some things that you just don't buy generic.
You just don't do. I would vote mac and cheese as one of them, actually, and Q-tips. I do not. I'm so tired of the cheap Q-tip just breaking apart in my hand, in my mid-ear canal. It's just not okay. But those are all value conversations, right? Of back and forth, what you will compromise, what you will not. What are some things when it comes to budgeting, where, and maybe this is a general broad brushstroke, where you see people most rampantly misallocating, and I know this is going to be kind of a judgment, but misallocating their funds to something where with a little work and a little intention, they could not have to make a major sacrifice or really cut themselves down, but could make some real gains, and say, hey, if not, instead of going with plan A, if you tried B on this thing, you might be farther ahead, but not really have to, like, put cut yourself off at your knees and really make some drastic sacrifice.
That's a great question and a really hard one, because it does bring sometimes judgment.
Sure. Yep.
But I think one of the things that sometimes, just reminding people that there are alternatives, like brand buying. That was a great one. You know, there are alternatives. We might not compromise on some things, but there are alternatives to others. Clothing, new clothing can cost a lot of money. Now, you can shop some of their clearance racks and you can do that kind of stuff, and you can get some good deals. You can go to these secondhand places, Clothes Mentor, maybe they should become a sponsor.
There we go.
But, there's other alternatives to saying, how can we back this off a little bit? I would be remiss in not telling you a story of a time that I was judging one of my former youth, having coffee with him, and he does some amazing work down in Indianapolis with helping to get rid of child trafficking and all this stuff. Just great young man. And so we're getting together, and we walk out of the coffee shop, and there's this really nice Tesla sitting there. I'm like, wow, yeah, that's sweet, And he's like, yeah, that's mine. And I'm like, oh. He goes, now before you judge, too late.
Too late.
Judge already happened.
Right, yeah.
But no, what happened was this Tesla, with what he saves in gas and making trips down 3-4 times a week to Indianapolis, more than pays for the payment on the Tesla.
Interesting.
And so he also feels like then I'm helping the environment. I'm not using much, fossil fuel, blah, 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 blah. And I am like, thank you, man. That convicted me to say, don't look at someone's decision just based upon what's right there.
Yep.
That he thought that through. He ran the numbers. He looked at it, and that's where it can.
But I think it goes to show you that there's hidden things here of other ways to think about if, and sometimes it's like for instance, I like on the vehicle side, there's a tipping point there of I can get a slightly better vehicle and reduce my maintenance cost by X and reduce the amount of time that I am otherwise pulled from, XYZ. Because that's what a big part of our decision was, and when we started just getting newer vehicles was like, okay, the actual amount of money that it is costing me for upkeep and fixing and all of that is now becoming a prohibitive thing when we do the end of year totals or whatever. And so I always had, like, over the several years, I had like I started coming up with and again, this is not me. I am not like coming up with formulas on things very, very often, but I did sort of have kind of a formula of like, here's how much this vehicle costs me to drive at the end of the year, like every mile, the total cost for this particular vehicle. And then it was like, okay, if we get a new vehicle, the cost is this. And that's all of the maintenance stuff. That's everything, whatever. And again, those are hidden numbers until you start to look at them. You start to realize, actually, all said and done, within a certain range, probably not up to Tesla range yet, but within a certain range, you're not hurting yourself as badly as you might think. And so I think there's so much of this just has to do with, and what I'm hearing from you, Ken, is being intentional, taking the time, do some digging. Folks like yourself are there to help in that journey as much as people are willing to. And I think about our own advisor are very available to have those conversations and do that digging and that exploration if we're willing to kind of like, as I like to say, get naked in front of people, and have that transparency.
Well, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that too, because I know that especially if you're struggling in the finance area, it's hard to look and go, okay, what can a financial advisor help me out with? And what are some ways that you can kind of get over that idea of, I don't need that because it's going to cost more for me to go to this financial advisor? And like, what are the advantages of doing an advisor?
So I'm a financial consultant.
That's right.
Which is okay because there are legal terms that we just have to watch. But one of the things that, and this is kind of a plug for Everence, but we are a sponsor.
Sure.
So
it's 100% okay.
But we're one of those, when you hear about being a fiduciary, like that's what we are. So someone comes in and talks and wants to just look at where things are at, take a snapshot of where things are at, ask questions. We don't charge people just to do that. Now, if you want to develop a financial plan, we have different advisors that are financial planners in our office that work that way. There's fees with that kind of thing. But if you just want to talk to someone, contact someone at Everence. They'll be happy to talk with you, set up a call on Zoom, come in person, however you want to do that, and just say, here's the things I'm struggling with and I'm dealing with. We'll talk to you about how we work. We'll talk to you about the things we do, how we might be able to help. We're going to talk about a budget. I almost guarantee that everybody's going to do that.
Yeah.
But we'll do that and kind of talk that through with you. And there's no cost to that.
Sure.
Don't feel inhibited by that.
That's great. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I think, because I would agree, it's like, I know for the longest time I was like, oh, financial consultants, financial advisors, whatever. This is for the rich people. This is for that other, I have a friend of mine, past guest Randall. He's always talking about how the other half live, right? Like, that's for the other half, whatever. But really, I mean, every person would benefit, no matter their age, their stage of life, what their particular situation is. Everybody would benefit from just having someone, and so many things in life of this are the case, having someone come alongside of them, have the conversation, put new eyes, fresh perspective on it. It's good. And I mean, the reason we have partnered with Everence, one of the major reasons is we want to see families thrive. We want to see, we talk a lot with our dudes and our dads, we want to see people be able to step up to the plate, have better health, holistically,
everything,
right, all around the board. So this is a key conversation toward that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think one of the last things that before we get into our Dudes and Dads pop quiz, which you've been prepared for, hopefully. He's listened to a few episodes,
so I know what's coming.
Yep.
Are there any apps or things that you could recommend, maybe budget wise? You'd mentioned a spreadsheet, but any other tools that could be used for creating a budget?
So one that I've messed around a little bit with is called Mint, and a lot of people might have heard about that. But I would encourage listeners, check out with your own financial institution. They will often have something even built in as a point of starting, where you can put a budget into there and it will actually track things for you. So banks are getting much more, and credit unions getting much more, kind of sophisticated in that way. And so that's a great thing to do. If you don't want to do any of that, even take a piece of paper and just write down. Like I had one person say, well, here's my budget. And it was just 12 or 15 lines on a piece of paper written down. And the reality is, that's a budget. That's something that, and then the question was, well, how well do you follow that? Well, there's the work that can begin from that point. But just writing down, here's what we at least want to do. Here's how we want to get there. But check with your financial institution. Mint works with a lot of them. That's a really good one. So
great. And if anyone wants to check out Everence, obviously everence.com/Michiana is the local Michiana area, but everence.com overall, they have a large
national organization.
So
there's an Everence near you somewhere.
Yes, definitely.
Find them.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for being on the show tonight. We've really appreciated you in the talk about budgeting and the light that you've shed to that and how important that is for dudes and dads and families.
And we've destigmatized that financial consultants they're fun-loving people. They are approachable.
That's right.
They are normal human beings. Give them a shot.
That's right.
Just give them a shot.
But one last thing before we go, we have to do...
Now it's time for the Dudes and Dads pop quiz.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So if you've never joined us for the Dudes and Dads pop quiz, it's just a random time we ask questions to our guests and fun questions to get to know our guests better. So I will go ahead and start the questions out here. Sometimes we have to skip them because sometimes we're like, oh, that's not a good question.
Some of these questions are great and some are not.
All right. So if you could send a message to the entire world, what would it say in 30 seconds?
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't come out light swinging.
Boy, no kidding. I love Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So, the whole idea of just be kind to one another, that's going to solve an awful lot of problems out there if we're just kind to one another. So
wonderful. Kent, what are you most excited about right now?
Right now, honestly, we're getting ready to start at least the planning process for some renovations in the house we bought. So, because we want to live there another 20 plus years.
The compound's getting a facelift.
The compound's going to get a facelift. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So this kind of maybe goes around along with budgeting, but if you could be guaranteed one thing in life besides money, what would it be?
Probably contentment. I don't know if we need to say more about that.
No, that's good. That's awesome. Yeah. That's wonderful, Kent. Kent, when you die, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be known as a guy who loved God, who who loved his family and loved people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Which living person do you admire most?
My dad. I don't know if he's going to listen to this or not, but my dad has been an amazing example as a dad, and even with what he's dealing with now, continues on. So,
Awesome.
yeah, my pop.
Love the dads here. That's beautiful. What will people look back at us 50 years from now and be shocked and appalled by?
So I think Brent got this question.
I think he did.
He did.
I think he did.
And when I was listening to the podcast, my immediate thought went to like Facebook. I mean, I think what goes on with Facebook and the way people treat each other, I think we're going to go, wow. I know that's very similar. Sorry, nothing new, but wow. Yeah.
All right, my last question. What do you consider the most overrated virtue? I think Brent got that one too.
Maybe.
We need to reshuffle these cards.
Yes. The most overrated virtue?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a real ethics question.
Yeah. Most overrated virtue.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So I used to, I'm going to tell you a story instead of answering the question. So I used to always tell people that youth ministry is great as long as you can fake that honesty and integrity stuff. So I don't know, somewhere in there, look for the answer. And I was joking, by the way. So.
The honesty and integrity. That speaks to my heart at a deep level. Kent, here, this is where we really dig deep. And Andy's gotten asked this question before too. When were your parents most disappointed in you?
It would definitely have been in late high school, around fair time, making some decisions with a party I was at and maybe imbibing.
Story of my life right there. Yeah. That's usually, here's the deal. Most of those greatest disappointment they do come in the teen years. And I just remind everyone, the brain is not fully formed yet. The wisdom and decision, epicenter, the prefrontal cortex. Sandy loves me throwing that word out. Super fancy. Just not all there yet. So it's not a surprise. Not a surprise.
Yep.
Well, Kent, thanks for joining us today. We really enjoyed the conversation with you. We're looking forward to even more conversations in this coming year about money and ways to do that generously and be able to give. And
we're here to educate. We're here to educate, to inspire, to destigmatize. All those big words. Friends, you can always head over to dudesanddadspodcast.com for recent show updates, the show notes, the links, all the info on every episode. The socials.
Join us. And you can always provide feedback, 574-213-8702, or email us, feedback@dudesanddadspodcast.com.
And as always, got to remember that we are on the Instagrams and all the social media. We're trying to stay hip and with it on this show. Guys, we are excited about season 4 as it started off. Thanks for joining us again. Tell your friends, share, do all the good stuff. And until next time, we wish you
grace
and peace.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram